Welcome back to another episode of Life with Lambda. I'm here with Grace.
Hi.
Hello. How are you going?
Great. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. I feel like it's been such a long time in the making.
Like 6 months?
6 months in the making, yep.
Yeah.
Jeez, you can tell how quick I'm onto these things.
I'm just as guilty, so yeah, thanks. I'm glad we're doing it now.
No, it's awesome. Like, I've heard so many good things about you, and I'm keen to dissect your story because I think it's such an interesting one and one for the modern ages, I reckon.
That's really nice. Thank you.
No worries. So I guess for the listeners, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name's Grace. I'm nearly 29, and I feel like that was a really childish answer. I'm nearly 29. I am originally from Wales, Cardiff in the UK, and I moved to Australia with my long-term partner in 2019. And I'm a nurse. I also do YouTube, and I'm hoping to start a business next year. But personally, I really enjoy fitness and working out. I'm really interested in creativity, and since we've moved to Australia, I've become really interested in finance and working on side hustles and financial freedom. That's also been something that I've learned about since we moved here.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I guess that's why it sort of encapsulates the modern age. I think as we've gotten more and more deeper into, well, as I've grown up, I think there's more and more emphasis on like side hustles and finance and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So very keen to unpack. So touch on nursing a little bit. Has that been a huge part of your life, and probably still is at the moment,
It's
isn't
the
it?
most enormous part of my life ever. And I think if you'd have told me at 18 what it might have taken going into it, I don't know that I would have done it. But now I'm so glad that I've been through all the life experiences I've had and all the incredible patients and colleagues I've had. But I was never that typical growing up thinking, I really want to be a nurse. I wasn't like a child with a stethoscope around my neck or tending to wounds or anything. I literally had no clue what I wanted to do. I think it's really difficult when you're 16 and you're basically faced with, what do you want to do for the rest of your life, which is what is sold to us as young people. And I think our generation now are so open to moving careers and trying to learn different skills, and I don't necessarily think that the path that you pick as a young person has to be the full trajectory forever. I wanted to be a physiotherapist, and I can't necessarily say why. I was just really into fitness and sport. I went to see the careers advisor. The careers advisor said to me, "You will not have the grades to become a physio." So I left the careers day at high school feeling a bit deflated. And then I had a look at physio, and I also looked at nursing, and I was kind of like, maybe I could do that. I love working with children, but I don't want to be a teacher. I was looking at sort of like daycare or then being a dental nurse, and I just landed on children's nursing. And my parents are so supportive. They're amazing. They've never pushed me to do anything. I've never felt any pressure. So I don't know why I have become such a psycho overachiever because they never pushed anything on me. They were just supportive of what I was doing. So yeah, I applied for 5 universities. I got rejected for 3 instantly because of my grades. I had one interview at Cardiff, which is a prestigious university for nursing, which I completely dive bombed. I'd done research online, and I started talking about a curriculum that was about 5 or 6 years out of date. And I could just see their faces. I was sensing it wasn't good. And then I left the interview and I was like, I haven't got that. So my last chance was Bristol, University of the West of England. And they have an amazing training program because their hospital is Bristol Children's Hospital, and it's like 6 stories, huge. They've got the retrieval service there, which I was so interested in as soon as I got into nursing. And I just did really well at the interview. They had a panel of teenagers in, and I could see the marker was putting things down the more people interacted and talked. So I'm good at talking. I just talked my ass off, and it was great. And I got my place.
Love that so much.
Yeah.
I love how you speak about the narrative that you've been pushed out to, and in terms of like your parents being supportive and everything, my parents are equally probably supportive, and I love them so much in terms of supporting passions and like being there for you when you absolutely need. And I think it's interesting you talk about how we're fed this narrative that you need to like do really well in the system to achieve your dream job for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So I think, how was that in terms of hearing your careers counsellor say you don't have the grades for this, or those 3 unis rejecting you and saying you're not good enough for this?
It really, and I think for a lot of people when they're young, it's really easy to feel defeated. And you're just like, well, this just isn't for me. This isn't my path. And I don't know in hindsight, if I didn't get into Bristol, how much harder I would have pushed to go back next year and try again to be a nurse. I don't know. But I think it's really important for young people, if there are young people listening, that you can't always take at face value what someone else believes of you, because it's not true. And I never thought I would be in the position where I started my master's last year, and I don't perceive myself as a very intelligent person. So I think, yeah, having the insight that you don't need to be in one career forever, but also if you get pushed back at the first hurdle, if you stop there, you've quit, and that's it. And I think it's the same with a lot of aspects in my life, and probably yours, where you don't take the first failure as the final sort of, well, this is just not for me. Yeah.
I love that. Love it so much.
Thank you.
So you graduated, or actually, what were you like as a kid?
My mum and dad said I was a good kid, which is nice. I think through high school, girls in general can be catty and they cannot get on. And I think we are also generally fed that through movies and stuff, like, and I see it in my adult life as well. Like, women sometimes don't get on with each other, I think, more than men. I think men are really good at just having it out, putting their differences aside and moving on. So I think through high school, the more I went through high school, the more I really saw the value of kindness and not necessarily being like gossipy, and the value of close friendships. So I am an introvert, and it took me until about 25 years old to realize that I was an introvert, because I had a gorgeous big group of friends, but quite frequently at lunchtime I would just want to go off with like one person, or I would spend some time alone. And I think my friends sometimes took that personally, or they would think that I was like not stuck up, but just not friendly. And actually, I wish I'd have had the tools to articulate as a young person that I just prefer one-to-one company more, or I struggle with long-term surface interaction because it really drains my energy. So I really wish I'd have had that insight, because I'm not socially awkward. I'm very...
No, not at all.
I'm chatty. I'm not a socially awkward person, but I really like my alone time. So yeah, I think I was just a very average student. I had lovely friends through school, and I reckon I was just quite average through high school. And then as soon as I got to uni, I was just a bit more ambitious and a bit more like, oh, okay, what am I going to do with my life? Because I had great friends, great supportive parents. So I was just so grateful I wasn't grown up with any pressure to like provide at a young age. I'm an only child, so I had no sibling to look after or provide for. So I don't really think it was until I got to uni that I came out of my shell and became a lot more maybe success driven and interested in the world.
What was that turning point like, or when was the realization that, hey, maybe I should probably push myself into a successful career? Like, what was all that like?
Initially nursing was so confronting. So my first day as a student nurse, you work 12-hour shifts in the UK NHS no matter what. So I've done that for 10 years anyway. And it's 12-hour day or 12-hour night, and that's it. There's no 8 hours really. There is some in community. Whereas I know we'll talk about it later, but I love here in Australia, there's more 8-hour shifts. There's more flexibility. I feel there's a little bit more acknowledgement of work-life balance and that nurses are humans, not robots. I think the turning point for me was coming towards the end of uni. I'd had really amazing experiences. I really enjoyed ICU, which I think ICU attracts a certain type of person, and apparently I was that type of person.
Can you describe that type of person?
I think people who work in intensive care, they like to push themselves. They like to learn. they're more, I guess, they're more oriented towards the biology as well, of like the why, so the mechanism in the body of why things are happening. And I think problem solving as well. So I found intensive care so satisfying, because normally over the course of a shift, you could see what drugs or what interventions were helping make things better. Or you could, like, most of the time by the end of the shift or by the end of a few days with a patient, you can see them getting better. And I don't want to say I'm a high achiever, because I think that sounds really cheesy, but I think it does attract a certain type of person who likes to push themselves. So a lot of the intensive care nurses that stay on will do their postgraduate there in PEDS ICU. They might go on and do their masters, or they go into education or teaching roles or management. I think that is the pool of people that I generally see in ICU. And I know even now in my new job, almost 70% of the staff now will be ex-ICU.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. See, I know nothing about this field. Well, my partner's going into, I guess, the biomedicine sort of field as well, which is really interesting, and
cool.
we need to get her on the podcast. But
congrats.
yes, I know, amazing. So she's hoping to do medicine and everything. So
wow.
I have like an inkling on some things, but a lot of it I'm very much just like, what's going on?
I think over time she'll come home from work and she'll share things with you, and by the end of her degree, or 4 or 5 years, you'll be like Dr.
Oh yes, I'll be her associate.
Yeah, you will be her associate.
Oh, I love that. What was the timeline like? So you finished high school. You've done how many years at uni?
3 years at uni. 3 years at uni. It's like an honours. It's an honours degree. So in the UK, you can't do a diploma. So there's no more RN, which is like a registered, or EN, enrolled nurse pathway. You can only be a registered nurse, which is the degree pathway at home. And they got rid of the diploma a really long time ago. So the pathway was 3 years. I loved my training in Bristol. It was amazing, because I had all these different placements in Bristol Children's Hospital and Bath, and they gave me loads of specialities. So I did like oncology, respiratory, ICU, like babies, neonates, which was fun, which is really interesting. I used to hate babies. I hated them.
Why?
I found babies so when I was young, like early 20s, I was like, oh, they don't talk to you, they don't give you anything, they don't respond. And gradually babies are now my favorite patients to care for. I absolutely love them. I love giving them a cuddle, changing their nappy, cute. But initially reflecting on it, I think I was a really difficult student to have in the neonatal placement, because it was community, and I think I was very uninterested. And I look back on that, and I know it's a learning experience, but I'm very ashamed of how I approached that placement, because I was uninterested, unengaged, and I just went and did it and came home every day, which I think is not really the person that I am.
But I think it's a very maturing perspective for you to take, like looking back at it now in hindsight, such a powerful thing as well.
Yeah.
But obviously, like you're still young, and maybe you're just thinking, oh, there's better things to do or better things going on. So I don't know. I feel like you don't have to be ashamed. Like,
that's true.
We've always had a point in time where maybe, I don't know, it's like a family gathering where you're a bit uninterested or not really engaged with people, and then looking back, you sort of cherish the time that you actually had with your family as well.
It's so beautiful. That's true.
Yeah, exactly.
My dad said on the phone to me the other day as well, and he was just like, do your best. And I think I've really, in the last few years, I've taken forward being an adult, having your own place that you live, being accountable, stupid things like cleaning or taking care of yourself, all of those things, like the importance to me now of doing my best and showing up has become so apparent as I've gotten older, that's the person I want to be. I want to be someone who they're like, if you think of Grace, you think, yeah, she'll do that and she'll do a good job.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's so good. Shout out, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, literally. So you finished the 3 years, and then was it straight into the workforce? Was there anything that sort of deviated, like maybe traveling or anything?
Didn't take a gap year, so we did travel. So I did 6 months on the surgical ward, PEDS, and then I went straight to the ICU for almost 3 years, and I did my postgrad there. And I started YouTube at that time as well. And then in October 2018, we'd saved, and It drives me crazy now because the amount of money we saved at home, we could have saved so quick if we lived in Australia because the wages are so much better here. But we saved for a long time, and then we traveled for 6 months in Asia. And that for me was just the turning point of opening my eyes to the fact that anything is possible. And also just that humans from all walks of life, we're all the same and we're all one, which sounds really cheesy, but just feeling so much more connected to the world. It was just an incredible experience.
No, I love that so much because I hear from, I guess, people who are a bit older or have had the opportunity to travel, that traveling is probably the best thing that you can probably do for yourself in terms of finding yourself and being at peace with yourself or learning the great wide wonders of the world. Besides finding that sort of peace and unity amongst people from a different country or a different place, is there anything else that you can take away that is your final like urge or push for people to go travel?
I think if you can do it while you're young, I think your tolerance for staying in hostels and places that are not the cleanest or the fanciest or big shared rooms, I think if you can do that while you're young, it's so much cheaper. And the experiences that you get from that and from seeing other countries and other cultures, I believe it makes you a better person because it makes you more open-minded to other people's walks of life and culture and not just your own and where you've come from. And I think growing up in the UK, we're so lucky we have Europe on the doorstep. So most people go to Europe maybe once a year if their family is doing okay, and you get to go and see other cultures. Whereas I think if you're more isolated in terms of water, maybe America or Australia, if you haven't previously been able to travel and go and see those things, seeing them in person just brings a whole new perspective than watching it online.
Amazing.
Yeah. It was great.
Yeah, I recently traveled alone for the first time with my partner. Yeah, which was really, really lovely. And I just thought it was just a really great experience in terms of finding independence and being, I guess, accountable for your own actions and like what you have to do and everything. I know Issika did a lot of the planning, so shout out to Issika. But in terms of like actually traveling around and seeing, I guess, Singapore for what it was or Bali for what it was, like it was really, really awesome. And yeah, I probably implore a lot of people to just
great.
Put aside some time to see the rest of the world.
I think as well, if you travel with a partner, it really strengthens the bond because you face really unexpected challenges. You have to plan things, you have to budget. And if you're lucky enough to have a partner that you really love and you see yourself with in the future, traveling with them overseas just brings another dimension to your relationship too.
Yeah, you hear about like the make or break sort of
thing. Do you know what? 100% though. Yeah, especially if you've gone for any period of time, you kind of realize like, can I tolerate this person 24 hours a day all the time? Like, do I really love them? And, you know, do we have fun together? Because I feel like that's just what life is about. We're really just having fun. So.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to talk about your YouTube. Did that all start when you were traveling, or was that sort of a side thing?
It started as soon as I finished university. So I had 3 years working in the UK, then travel.
What year was this?
I graduated in 2015.
Okay, yeah.
And I started my YouTube. I started my YouTube in 2017.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, I even had to think about that then. So I started it about a year before we went traveling. And there was 2 initial things that really drove me to start the YouTube channel. One was that I was so poor. I was so poor. My graduating nurse wage was £21,000, which I don't know what that is in Aussie. It's like 44.
Probably not even.
Something.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know the conversions.
I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
But I just had so little money. I was living with my parents, and then I lived with Joe's family for a bit. Like, we lived together there. It was lovely. And I just had so little money. I thought if I had, on top of this, more bills, and I had a mortgage that wasn't just paying rent to my parents or Joe's family, I don't know how I would survive. And it was that kind of, to me, that I thought, this money is not going to be enough alone to sustain me. And then the other side of it was, I'd always actually been interested in YouTube, so I cringed. But as a teenager, I made some videos and put them on YouTube of me like singing songs.
Oh, I love
and
them.
someone found them at school one day, and I deleted them all.
Oh no!
And then even before that, YouTube had just come about, and me and my friends had like a flip phone, and we would film silly skits that I still actually can find on YouTube.
Oh, that's so
of
good.
us in like dressed up in like genie costumes, and we'd have a storyline. And then after that, I played with doing just a vlog to music with when Joe and I would go traveling on holiday. And then finally in 2017, I was so inspired by most of those OG fitness YouTubers, so the Gymshark people like Nikki Blackketter and stuff, that I was like, I'm going to give this a go. And I was never going to be a fitness YouTuber. I wasn't dedicated enough, but I had a go. And I did some nursing videos and they popped off, and I got like 20 or 40,000 views on them. And I was kind of like, hang on a minute, this is really interesting and I'm enjoying it.
Wow.
So that was the turning point then.
Yeah, amazing. It lights me up that you talk about how you were into YouTube as a little kid and everything, because I can definitely relate. I was definitely a YouTube kid, and like we were talking about before, the G7X camera, got that when I was a little kid just to like make videos, and then people found them at school, and then you sort of get bullied, or not bullied, but sort of like teased, and then you sort of take that really personally, and then you get rid of the videos. I'm really what's the word? I'm really just say sad that I deleted all my videos, because I can't look back at the memories and cringe. But like you cringe, but you laugh at the memories that you were able to share with some of the friends that you made.
Yeah.
When you were making those videos.
Oh,
so
how you've grown.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And it's like I listen to my podcasts. I don't really actively listen to them. Sometimes I fall asleep and they just start playing. Yeah. Of like way back when I first started this, and I'm like, why did I say some of the things that I said? Like it's just. I think it's really important. I don't know, that storyline's really important in terms of being able to look and see the documentary of when you were young and like watching you progress in life.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I've really loved the idea of creating content and documenting things, and I think it's awesome that you were able to do so as well, because the singing thing I can relate as well. I've got a video up on YouTube that's like Sing Star with the Boys, Jaden. So if you look that up, I'm there.
I can't wait.
My friend can't delete it, so it's there forever.
No way.
which is embarrassing, but I look back and it's like it's funny to look back at, and you smile and you laugh and everything. So I love that story. In terms of finding your niche as well, I think there's an important story there in terms of you wanted to do fitness, and then you posted a nursing video, and then that's what took off. And I think that's like a nice parallel to maybe life in terms of your career opportunities and those sorts of things, because maybe you want to go into like clinical nursing, but now you're going into the more office side of things.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's the sort of linkage that I found.
I thought I was an ICU ride or die for life, and then apparently my threshold was 6 years, which I'm proud of. But you don't know which way things are going to go, and that for me on YouTube, that was what blew up. And then I thought, right, well, I'm going to put my energy into that then, and it was actually helping people. I had so many comments and DMs that at some point I would feel overwhelmed or stressed by the amount of Instagram DMs I would have, because I only had like 2,500 followers on Instagram, but I would have so many DMs, and it brought me joy, but I would clear them, and then again I would have 20 within a week, and I couldn't keep up with it.
So describe your type of video that you posted, or the first one that sort of like took off.
All sit down talking. So really similar to a podcast. Sit down talking, and all providing value and information. So nothing self-serving, nothing about my life or my routine. It was all like, this is what I do on my night shift. This is how I get better sleep, or this is how I studied for my nursing exams, or those kind of things were really helpful. Yeah, it's
such a niche space that you've gone into as well. So I can imagine like that's why it's really personable. Like you have almost 15,000 followers or subscribers on YouTube, which is crazy in terms of like Australia's a very small market. So sometimes you just never have that sort of following, which is really cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, amazing. And it's like the 2,500 followers. Yes, it might not be a big number in the scheme of things, but I think
it was the connection.
It's the connection. It's the community that you're able to have. Yeah, exactly. Amazing.
It was good. Yeah, thanks.
Where did it sort of take you?
it took me to then working with a couple of brands, and I think I could have probably negotiated a lot more money than I did. Okay. Like one of the videos has like 60 or 70,000 views now, and I think I got paid like £250 for the video with them, which you just don't know how to value yourself until you've worked in that space for a while. So, what were we talking about then? Where's it taken me?
Yeah, the nursing videos and everything. Yeah, sort of what was the timeline after you started posting the nursing videos in terms of like, did brands start approaching you? What were the DMs like? How did you sort of balance this like overwhelming experience?
With being a full-time nurse as well. I put a lot of time into it. So I would go and sit in a coffee shop with a coffee, and I would reply to DMs. I would do my emails. I have had, as most people would know, after 10,000 subscribers, so many emails trying for companies to want to work with you. There has been a lot of things that I've not been interested in at all. The things that I'm kind of proud of are, so there's a recruitment agency in the UK called nurses.co.uk. So I did videos with them. And then when I was posting regularly in Australia, I worked with my favorite protein company, which was Happy Way.
Oh my God.
Which really excited me when they approached
so
me, because I was kind of like, oh, amazing. So I'm hoping I can kind of rekindle that with Happy Way this year. Now I'm going back to YouTube sort of on a full-time basis. I'm hoping that will lead to something great.
That's so cool. Good. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. That's like something I could dream of.
You'll get there. You'll get there. It's just that. What podcast number are you on now?
Oh gosh, you'll be episode 60, I believe.
Wow,
of the
incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Episode 60. In terms of interviews and like properly changing the whole branding, I'm not too sure, but just gone through and changed all the sort of episode numbers and everything. What are some tips for YouTube, for any aspiring YouTubers out there?
Yeah,
I know you might think, 15,000, not very much, but like I think it's a great number.
Thank you.
Very big number.
I know. I think it's like not a lot.
Yeah, and in terms of, I think when you enter the space and you see 15,000, you're like, oh gosh, it's only 15,000. Like there's people with millions of subscribers out there. But then I always like to think of when people are listening to my podcast, it's like X amount of people in a room.
Yes.
Like listening to me talk to someone, and I'm just like, wow, this is like actually very fulfilling in terms of the reach and the audience that I'm getting.
That's lovely. My boyfriend put exactly that into perspective for me. We went to Fridays Live in November, which was like, Shaggy and Ashanti and stuff. And I think there was 15,000 people or something similar in that auditorium at the time. And Joe was like, this is how many subscribers you have. He was like, think about that. And it kind of just, like you say, it blew my mind. I thought, actually, yeah, it's really impactful. You're right. If that was the amount of people in a room, it's making a difference.
It is.
My advice for people aspiring or starting on YouTube would be, you don't need fancy kit. So I saved up and bought myself a £100 camera when I started, and it was perfect for what I was interested in. I think sound is everything. So just focus on the sound, because yourself, if you go on a YouTube video and the sound's terrible, you click out. And then just practicing, honestly, having that perseverance to do 50 or 100 videos just to practice and not expect any traction from it. I think we're very instantly gratified in our current living technology society. And I think it is so hard for people to go back and realize that if you've done something 10 times, you're probably not going to be that good at it. Like the first 10 times that I did a squat or like an overhead press with a bar in the gym, my form wasn't great and I wasn't very good. And that's because I did it 10 times. So I like to think now, after you've done something for 50 or 100 times, you get better. So just practicing, playing around with the editing software, whatever you decide to use, being consistent, replying and engaging with your audience, and also the biggest, most cliche thing ever, just providing value to people, because especially when you start out, people are not super interested in you unless you are incredibly intelligent or very attractive. They just don't want to know. So you need to be providing value so that people are coming to your channel because they want to watch you.
I love the sort of instant gratification aspect that you touch on, because sometimes you post a Instagram post, maybe let's just put it into that context, and you're like, oh, it's not doing very well in terms of like likes and comments, and it's almost sad in a way that we're in a society where that's sort of what gives you sort of validation in terms of your likes and everything. Like you post a TikTok and you're like, oh, it's not getting many views. I've used a trending audio and those sorts of things. So it's very interesting. And I love the idea of like giving value. I think that's such an important aspect in terms of content creation. How did you learn how to edit? Because I know a lot of people do struggle with that. And like, what software do you use and how do you go about that?
When I first started out, I got really obsessed before I even posted with learning how to, gain traction on YouTube. And there was a YouTuber called Roberto Blake, which he specialized a lot in explaining how to use editing software. And I just got down the rabbit hole with Adobe Premiere Pro because I didn't have a Mac at the time, didn't use Final Cut.
Final Cut, yes.
Yeah, that's it. Didn't use Final Cut, got really into using Adobe products, and I was happy to invest £15 a month into that because that was the only cost to my YouTube channel was £15 a month, which I feel as though if you're investing in yourself or starting something like a business and you've invested here in yourself, which is fantastic,
yes.
You know that you have to save and sacrifice a little bit to put in. So I spent probably 100 hours watching YouTube videos on editing, maybe not quite that much, but a lot of time. And I just literally taught myself using the software and editing from scratch. And it just took a long time.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the message around it. It's like, it doesn't happen instantly in terms of editing. And it goes back to the 50 to 100 repetitions sort of thing, maybe 100 hours of watching like tutorials and everything. Like, this has taken so long for me to sort of like cultivate and like learn the ins and outs of podcasting. I've had podcasts where it's like nothing's recorded and it's just the worst feeling. Can you talk to us about any times where something majorly bad happened or you felt that, oh my gosh, like I had the best content out here but couldn't release it or anything? Has that ever happened?
There's been times when I haven't hit record or the sound hasn't recorded, and especially towards the start, I made those errors all the time. And I thought I had a whole video together, put it on the laptop, and there's no sound or there's nothing. I think there's also an element with my career as a nurse. So you have, obviously, you have to be, I would like to think I have integrity anyway, but you have to respect patient confidentiality. You have to, uphold your nursing registration and be respectful. So I think sometimes I have to not censor the content that I put out, but I have to be mindful of my registration and making sure that my content and my videos are also appropriate so that it's not going to cause any issues for me in my actual career, which I also love. I feel a lot less stressed about that in Australia than I did in the UK. I think in the UK, I constantly felt this niggling that my registration was at risk or something. Whereas in Australia, there is, and I think a lot of people would agree, there's a lot less stress around me losing my registration or doing something wrong, or I'm still respectful, but I just feel a bit more relaxed, which is nice.
Why is that?
It is the culture of nursing in the UK in general. I couldn't necessarily put my finger on why, but you always think, if I do this today at work, am I going to lose my registration? What if I do this? Am I going to lose and I had that constant niggling at home that I really don't feel here. I feel much more supported, and I feel as though when mistakes happen, because they do when we're human, they are, you feel awful, but they're looked upon much more as like mostly a learning experience. As long as there's no harm to the patient, it's about education rather than necessarily pointing the finger and persecuting. I'm not saying that's all how it is in the UK, but I definitely feel a huge difference here.
It's very interesting in terms of like feeling comfortable at work and everything.
It emanates through into the workforce as well, I think, and how people behave at work and just how they feel more relaxed and stuff.
Interesting perspective. Yeah, in terms of the workforce and everything, I never would have thought. And like, I had a chat with someone else and they were like, yeah, explore different parts of like Australia even. Like, Melbourne's very different to Brisbane. Brisbane's very different to Sydney, XYZ. So yeah, there's all these different factors in terms of like the workforce and maybe where you're working. So that's a huge point as well. Other than sort of the workforce expectations and pressures, did you find that any friends or colleagues were sort of waning on you in terms of like your content creation or anything back in the UK or in general?
People didn't really know about my YouTube channel in the UK, not much. I had my one girlfriend at work who knew about it, and she was really supportive. She was lovely. Her name was Jade. And then it didn't really, I don't really think it took off properly until, in terms of subscribers, until I went off backpacking almost. So occasionally people would say to me that about my YouTube channel, it was much more in Australia. And especially in the ICU environment, sometimes I felt really uncomfortable with people talking about it in the break room, or I feel like sometimes people had nasty or unhelpful comments, or like someone said to me, you know, I don't know if I'm allowed to use the word, but she was just like, oh, it's really ballsy that you do that, or like, my life's really private, I could never do that. Or I understand where people are coming from, but just things that like weren't necessarily supportive or helpful. But then I've had other people who have had like, I watched this video, it was so helpful, it was beautiful, I love what you're doing. And I've had both ends of the spectrum, and I've definitely got a thick skin that I am not really bothered about other people's opinion if I think I'm doing something good.
Yeah, and I think that's what deters a lot of people from like creating content or posting something a bit rogue on Instagram or a bit ballsy on Instagram.
Box, yeah.
Exactly, just like out of the box. And I really don't enjoy when people project their view. I literally run a podcast, so like this is me projecting my views as well. But when people make those comments like, oh, I wouldn't do that, and it's like, okay, that's awesome for you, but this is something that I do. So I don't know why you need to be like saying something like that. And I guess it's sort of the payoff that you have for content creation, because maybe they're projecting their views that, yeah, they wouldn't do it. And it's not something that they would do. So then they'd look down on you, because why would you do that if they're not doing it? So yeah, it's always been something that like bugs me a little bit in terms of like our generation and like looking down at people who are like trying to do something a bit different.
I've definitely made my peace with it. So I'm just very accepting, but I'm very far down the track now. So I get what you're saying, and I think it used to bother me a lot, and it was what stopped me for so long from doing anything. But ultimately the payoff that I've had from it has been amazing. Yeah, and all the connection has been so good. So I would say to anyone who wants to start something, start it and see what happens. And honestly, our brains catastrophize. They literally think of the worst possible scenario for everything. And in actual fact, probably the first few things that you post, no one's going to watch them anyway. And if you do make a mistake, you're never going to do anything as catastrophic as someone like, I don't know, the Paul brothers, Jake and Logan Paul, for example. That's not going to happen, but our brains catastrophize. Our brains go there and they think that the world is going to end, and it's not. And the most helpful thing you can ever do if something is holding you back is to speak or write all of the worst case scenarios out. Because normally you look at them and you go, they're fine, or they're actually not going to happen. That's what I think.
Yeah, I love that so much. And yeah, we do catastrophize a lot. And I think it's a really hard bridge to cross sometimes for people. And I guess I can relate it to maybe the jewelry brand that you're about to start as well, which we'll definitely get into. But, you know, like you've got everything ready and then it's all just a click of a button and then we're good to go. It's just, I don't know. It's crazy how the human brain works and like what we think it would happen. And I reflect back on a conversation that I had on a podcast. I think it was with Lewis, how he said, because he goes out in public and he does like public like photo shoots and stuff. Like he asks people in public just to take a photo of them, which I think is
cool.
It's so cool, right?
I've seen that on Shorts.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
And I think it's such an awesome concept that he's trying to bring into like the heart of Melbourne City, just asking people to do photos. And he just said like, think of what is the worst thing that someone can say? Like whatever it is, you've probably thought worse. So it doesn't really matter like what other people think at the end of the day. And that's probably what's helped me cross the bridge in terms of like putting out more content and like just pulling the trigger and just like going full send with the podcast as well.
You have.
Yeah.
Literally. I love that. Like you say, to be in public with people, asking to take their pictures. There's so many things people could say to you, but most people are really friendly in Melbourne. And you're right. What's the worst thing that they could say that you haven't thought anyways? Yeah, that's exactly true. I like that.
I want to talk about Joey.
Yes.
Shout out Joey if he's listening. He probably should be listening, right?
I hope so.
Oh yeah, you'd hope so. How did you two meet? It's been a bit of a love story that I've heard at work, and finally I get to meet you.
I adore him.
Yeah,
thanks.
Amazing.
Joey, my boyfriend Joe, we've been together for over 9 years now, and he just oh, he's just my rock. He's just wonderful. So we met in high school, and the first time we met, we were both pretty drunk at a school bonding bash event, which is basically like all the sixth formers go out drinking in the evening. So we met out just one evening, and then we met again. I was dressed as a lifeguard with all my friends. And I just, as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh, he's lovely. I really like him. I liked how he looked. He was really funny. And then, we just started dating, and it just all went from there. And we've been together ever since and lived halfway across the world together. And he's a school year older than me, but he took almost like a year off after high school. So we both finished our degrees at the same time, even though he's a year ahead of me. So he did his sports science degree and I did my nursing degree. And going through those two things together was every step of the journey for us has just brought us even closer together, learning, supporting each other, picking up each other's slack. He's wonderful. So he was a personal trainer in the UK, and he was running his own boot camp, which was going really well at home. And then he was also working as a barista. So he's just so hardworking. I admire his work ethic so much. And then from there, when we arrived here, he did PT jobs, he did retail, he did lots of different things. And now obviously he's worked his way up to manager through the pandemic, which has been great.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. What's his presence been like in terms of your whole career trajectory? Like, I can imagine how strenuous being a nurse is, and then also balancing sort of the YouTube lifestyle as well. Like, can you describe what his presence has been like on your life?
I don't often reflect actually on how impactful he's been, because he is so supportive, and I think we tell each other we love each other and we appreciate each other. I can't express how having Joe through my entire journey has just made me the person I am today, because like you say, with nursing and with YouTube, Joe is so encouraging of my YouTube. He always gets me, he's always like, oh, I'll do this today. Or, some of my birthday or Christmas gifts have been things like a ring light or a stand or all those. And he's like, oh, what ideas have you got? He always encourages me, asks me about it. He's been super supportive. And I think especially when you see nothing is happening and at the start and you feel really silly, there's all those elements to it that he is just like, no, you're amazing. He's so passionate and supportive, which I am eternally grateful for. I just so grateful for him. And then my nursing career, we've had lots of challenges to work through that he has supported me on, because I have gone into a highly stressful field, things even like working night shift. He's been so supportive and respectful of my sleep during the day, because sometimes I'll work 3 or even 4 night shifts in a row and I have to sleep every day. Like if I wake up at 2 p.m, that's the equivalent of 2 a.m. and then I'm exhausted. So he's been really great with my sleep, my studies. He's encouraged me with my postgraduate, especially at the start. It wasn't super easy. We weren't just, together all the time straight away, because he was in uni in Cardiff and I was in uni in Bristol. So
how far apart are they?
It's like an hour and a half.
Wow,
so it's not bad. But when, Joey was at uni and then he worked, and I was at uni and had exams and placement. So sometimes when you're on placement, you're working full time anyway. So I'm not coming home from Bristol, but he would come and visit me, and we'd go for dinner or we'd go to the cinema, and he just made effort from day one. And even now he will still bring me home chocolate in the evening, or if I've had a rubbish day at work, especially when I was on shift work, he would just do something nice for me. Or he's just an incredible partner. And when we were traveling, he planned out all of our accommodation. We kind of like had our own little roles, and he would plan all the accommodation, look into the things we were going to do, and then I would be the navigator of, okay, well, this is how we get here. And I think huge challenges in Australia as well, with COVID, not always being able to work. We've gone through 3 different visas together, which has been cool. And we've also bought our own apartment last year together.
So
incredible partner. Yes. He's the best.
Oh, he's awesome and Shout out Joey.
Shout out Joey.
Yeah, no, we love your work. I think he definitely needs to hear that because I think he's just such a selfless person.
He is. He is really selfless.
And I definitely wanted to just fit that little segment in just as like a pick me up for him, or maybe just a thank you as like, the type of person that he is. What was it like moving to Australia?
I'd never been to Australia before. So I think that's another example, I guess, as well, for a podcast point, you know, being in a relationship where I think trust is huge. You have to trust each other. And Joe had been out here when he was 16. I'd never been to Australia, and I just was like, yeah, sure, I think I'm going to love it. Whatever, we'll just go for it.
Oh, wow,
and
really?
Yeah, I'd never been out here, never been to Asia. So we did everything. And when Joe and I first met, I wanted to go and work in Dubai as a nurse, earn loads of money and buy properties. I was very materially driven, and that was all I wanted to do. And Joe was like, well, I want to go backpacking and then I want to move to Australia. So we had such different views, and I'm so happy that we went traveling together and we came here and did this, because it's changed my perspective on the world and my values and how I am. Moving to Australia was very challenging. So Joe's good with his money. So when he was backpacking, he still had a bit of money left when we got here. I had nothing, and I lent money off my parents. So I was very privileged to be able to do that. And we went and lived with his cousins for 5 months, and they are gorgeous. They have 3 children and a dog, and they were so accommodating to us. We landed in Melbourne in the middle of the night. We went and got McDonald's, and then I remember coming in, and his cousin and his wife came and give me a cuddle, and then we went into our bedroom and we had a wardrobe, and I just started crying because for 6 months I'd been living out of this tiny backpack, and I was just so emotional and happy to have somewhere to put my clothes. So we lived with them for 5 months, and it was really rocky. I think it was the only time in my life that I've ever actually felt a little bit depressed. I didn't have my nursing registration. I didn't have a job for a while, and then I was working as a healthcare assistant in aged care, which is not my cup of tea. I really struggled. And then Joe did incredible. Like, he picked up a job straight away at H&M. He started working at a gym as well as a personal trainer. So Joe really smashed it, but I felt really purposeless, and I was probably quite mopey and miserable for months when we first moved here. And then it all turned a corner so quickly. As soon as we both had employment, we got an apartment, which is the first time we'd ever had our own place together, ever rented. And our friends came to live with us for a year, and it just all went on the positive then. Yeah,
that's a very quick summary in terms of like how you came from the low and all the way back to the high now. What was the low point like, and what did you tell yourself in terms of looking ahead, and like what did you give? What sort of encouragement did you give yourself to stick it out and stick fat?
I knew that my encouragement was that I knew that nurses were in demand, and that my registration would come through, and that everything would be fine. I hated being 25 and reliant on Joe's extended family across the world. We were literally reliant on them, living with them. They were feeding us. I hated being a grown-up and having no source of income, no, I guess, like autonomy over my life, because I had no income. We joined the gym, and that is a huge mental benefit for me, going to the gym. But also for me, I always go to like the worst case scenario. And it's not a bad scenario, but the worst case scenario was I would have to fly back to the UK with Joe, and we'd have to move home and get our jobs back in Wales and just go back to the life we were living before we were traveling. And that was fine. But I sort of just told myself, if everything goes wrong, I can literally ring my parents and say, hey, I'm coming home. I need to start again. And I'm so lucky to be in that position. So I just sort of told myself the only other alternative really is leaving. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to stay in Melbourne and give it a go. So that was the easiest way to get myself through all that, was to just be like, well, the alternative is just going back to where you were before.
Yeah, I love that. It's just,
I don't want to leave. I don't want to do that. Yeah, I don't want to leave.
I don't want to leave.
And our visa was 12 months at that point. So, and then it turned around so quickly. As soon as I got my job, within 3 months, my employer sponsored me, and Joe was on my visa as de facto. And from there, then we were secure and fine ever since.
I love that. Yeah.
It was just getting through that period of uncertainty, and I think uncertainty really messes with our brains.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, touching back on your vision in terms of moving to Dubai, earning lots of money and buying property, and then Joe's vision of backpacking and then coming to Australia. What was the conversation like in terms of your relationship? Because I can imagine, or in being in a relationship myself as well, it's really important to have like goals that sort of align, or that there's some sort of final destination. And what was that whole period like for both of you?
It was actually surprisingly fine. I had also always been interested in working as a nurse in Australia. So it worked out perfectly. And I always loved traveling anyway, because I was so lucky my parents would always take me to south of France, or I was allowed to go on trips to America with school. So I loved traveling anyway. And I think we just boiled it down to the fact that, Dubai or Australia, I'd like to do both to work. And actually, I just never even really considered backpacking. It hadn't been on my radar. And the more we talked about it, the more I got excited about it. And then we went with our 2 other friends. So we would go in and, periodically book more flights and get our like vaccinations and everything. And we were ready to rock. So it actually wasn't a hard conversation.
Oh, okay. I feel like that's like a huge like career, like 2 different ends in terms of like, I want to do this or I want to do that. Yeah. So I just thought maybe there was something there.
We always seem to see eye to eye. I'm so grateful so far that any decisions that we've had in terms of moving abroad, traveling, staying here longer, we've always just seemed to have seen eye to eye with what we want. And I'm sure there will come a time where that's not the case, but I feel we could definitely work through that together.
Well, 9 years is quite a long time. Talk to us about how to maintain a healthy relationship, because I feel like, 9 years with someone that you obviously love and care about a lot. I'm sure there'd be some low moments or some really high moments as well. What's it like juggling the 2?
I think you should try and be the partner that you would want. That is my biggest advice to anyone, because I think we always put our wants and needs and expectations, we can heavily put them on the person that we're sharing our lives with. And I just sometimes feel that that's not necessarily the best way to go forward in a relationship. And I think also encouragement is really important, and also just giving space for the other person to be human. So if I need a few days of just like playing video games with a greasy top knot on the couch, Joe is very accepting of me as I am, and vice versa. I think the same, if Joe needs a few days of recuperation, or if we're not necessarily, we take it in turns to be the more clean or tidy person, or we try and encourage each other to go to the gym together. But yeah, I my biggest piece of advice is to just be the partner that you would want, because ultimately you can't put all of your expectations onto that other person. And I'm just so grateful. Joe and I have never had any of those really serious issues. Like, there's no big rows between us. Neither of us are manipulative. There's none of that stuff that I'm like, obviously you should leave a relationship if that's happening. So I think in terms of being together and accepting each other and having a good time together, I also think fun. You just got to make time for fun. We try and do something fun at least once a week, once a fortnight, spending time together, like going on hikes or just finding your common interest and doing those things together. And then finally, I also really think that space is super important. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder. And I think, I'm able to have trips away with my friends or vice versa. And we have time apart and we have things to talk about when we come back together. And even down to, if I'm going to go and edit a YouTube video, I might go and do it in the cafe for a few hours on my own, even if Joe's at home. You just need sometimes that time apart as well, so that when you come together, you are sort of energized and really interested, because you're not aware of what's happening in each other's life 24/7. I think that's a good, not being in each other's pocket too much.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, the modern day relationship, everyone's like, I just like want to be with my partner like 24/7, and that's that. And I think COVID's encouraged a lot of that as well.
Spot on.
Yeah, because you're just comfortable with each other and within each other's company. But I love that, and I love when, like, maybe I'm working or Issika's working, and then we just come back and then sort of debrief. Or it's like she's gone off and done something, I've gone off and done something, and then just come back and debrief. And it's that debriefing that sort of
it's interesting.
It keeps the relationship like sort of alive and like fun and longing as well, which is amazing. Talk to us about your necklace company. It's been 8 months in the work. I'm going to turn this aircon off. I think it's just like...
It's not okay.
It's just like... Okay, there we go.
Perfect.
Awesome. Most dysfunctional podcast ever. No.
It's fine. I'm okay with it. So I had wanted to start a product-based business for a really long time. I have gone through the runner of every single failed trying to be a side hustle person in history. Which
I love. I love that so much about you, and it's a testament to your character as well. You touched on how I'm not a high achiever, but I think like the fact that you're going through all these different stages in your life and kicking goals, I think, yes, you are a high achiever. Just wanted to slip that one in.
That's nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think not to be scared of failure, and then also just acknowledging that loads of people have, there's so many failures before their bit of success. So I learned to be a nail technician, and I did nails, terrible at it. Learned to be an eyelash person and did threading and stuff. Didn't put enough practice in, which we talked about before. I didn't put the time in, and I wasn't very good at it. So I never felt confident to charge. I then did mobile spray tanning. As soon as I got my car at 17, I did mobile spray tanning. I got my own like t-shirt printed. I bought all the tanning gear, a pop-up tent, and I did that for maybe like a couple of years. I had like a Facebook page, and I would go to people's houses and spray tan them in their house or in their garden. What else have I tried to start? It goes all the way back to when I was in primary school. I had this little spinning disc thing with paper on it, and you could draw pictures and art and stuff on there, and they looked really cool. So I took them into school one day, and the kids loved them, and I was like, I'm going to charge for this. Yeah. So I asked everyone for £1.
No, that's actually, that's unlocked sort of a core memory of mine. Like, I used to do origami with a friend, and we'd post on like Instagram and be like, selling this for like $5.
I love that. That's how long ago was that?
This was in primary school. Like,
amazing.
And it sounds like you're such an entrepreneurial person. I wanted to ask, I know we're getting off topic, but you've been really entrepreneurial your whole life, and it seems like it's still really fresh to this day. In terms of the nursing and everything, did you feel that you needed the nursing to sort of fund all this, or was nursing just like, because it's safe, it's secure, like I'll do that instead?
In hindsight, if I would go back and be 18 all over again, I probably would have spent 2 years trying to start a business before I went into nursing. I love being a nurse, but the trajectory that we are sold all the way through school is that you get ready for uni. And I didn't know any different. I didn't know all the things I know now about the possibilities of starting a business, e-commerce. I didn't know any of that. And I mean, why should you know that at 18, I guess, especially when
you're fed the narrative.
That's 10 years ago now. Yeah. I'm 28. So that wasn't necessarily a thing there too. And my parents both have jobs as well. They're not entrepreneurs, and there's nothing wrong with that. And they're amazing at their jobs. But that was never, it was never in my radar to want to start something. So I think I might have also used my nursing career as a crutch, as an excuse to never have really started something and gone all in, because I have never needed to as such. I've always had a job, so I haven't necessarily needed the income from that, but I feel really passionately about creating things and being an entrepreneur. So I definitely, if I could go back again, I would do it slightly differently, but I can just take it from the now, which is going forward, I would like to go way more into it.
Yes. Yeah. I love this narrative that you've put out, and I think it's so important for people to, sort of be, deviate a little bit from that narrative that we're fed. And I think, yes, it's an amazing narrative that we're fed, like go to high school, go to uni, get a job, because it's safe, and then it's great for the economy because people are working and everything. But it's like, why not take a risk? You know, like, why not follow something that you're passionate about? Why not go off and start this brand that you've been wanting to start? Thank you. Why not like create a podcast that you want to because you want to spread some of your stories or your values and sorts of things. So I just love the entrepreneurial side and have always gravitated towards it as a little kid as well. And
I can tell that you have. Yeah.
And I love to see that like you've sort of taken the perspective of looking at your life from now and looking back at it and being like, hey, maybe like I should have started a business, but then not letting that define you and being like, well, it's too late now. Like, I don't want to start it now because like I'm already established as a nurse, but you're still continuing to do these things. And I just love that so much.
I was really inspired by Caitlin Oakley, who
shout out, yes,
already had on the podcast.
Yes.
And she has a successful earring business, Cielo Designs. She grew her Instagram through COVID from 0 to 25K. She's done amazing. And I was just, Caitlin was the first close person, real life example I'd had of, I can do that. And that's actually achievable. And then I've got, another friend, a couple who they are like digital nomads. They have done like done the whole traveling lifestyle. They make their money off online, and I met them at the start of last year. So I'd had 2 real life examples all of a sudden of people that were really doing it and they were actually achieving it. And then for me, I thought, oh, okay, I can do this. And we went to Sydney for my birthday for 3 days last year, and we went to the Sydney markets, and there was loads of little stalls and there was necklace stalls, and I loved one of this like white surfery necklaces, bought it, and then I thought, I could make this.
I can make this, yes.
And it just clicked, and so it was born.
Here it is, and it's been 8 months in the making. What's that been like?
A whole process. You know, when you said about starting, you said to me earlier before the podcast, starting a podcast, and it's like 20 stages. And I feel starting a business exactly the same, 20 stages. So I had previously done website stuff. So I had a blog for ages. So I was really au fait with websites. It was all fine. Started with that, but then I needed to do product photos. I needed to make the products first, so I needed to source all of the resources. I wanted the pearls to be real pearls, like freshwater pearls, because I don't like when you get a pearl beaded necklace, the pearliness flakes off over time. Yeah. And I was like, I want something that's really good quality. So then I was sourcing like a real freshwater pearl, and then I was learning how to create the clasps and everything at the back, and it was just all a process. So I just invested about $300 initially. I ordered a bunch of stuff and then just played with it and watched YouTube videos for quite a while. Then when I was happy, I put in maybe like another $300 to get everything set up, and I needed the website, Canva, and then the physical products, and now everything's ready to go. But product description, images, it has been a whole process. And again, Joey has been so supportive. He's been taking pictures for me. He got me a new stand so that I can take pictures with a remote by myself. All of those little things, which have just made such a huge positive impact. Yeah.
Amazing. Where do you see it taking you?
I'm going to speak it into existence because I'm just like,
you're on a podcast.
What have you got to lose? Yeah. I would really love by the end of the year to have potentially achieved what Caitlin's achieved with Cielo, but probably not quite to that extent because it will have only been a year. But basically, I would like to go to markets in Australia. So I'd love to do a Saturday or a Sunday market and take my products there because I love working with people. My whole job is at the moment now talking to families. So I'd love to go and meet customers and actually be there with them at markets. So that would be my goal for the end of this year, is to be established enough to be able to do that. And then also with YouTube, my ambitious goal for the end of the year is 25 to 50,000 subscribers if I'm consistent for the year. And that is what I would like to achieve.
Yes, I love that. Setting goals. And you put it on a podcast as well. What a way to do it.
It's out there.
Yep, it's out there now.
I'll see you next January and we'll see what happens.
Exactly. So other than that, what is next for you?
I don't particularly want to do a lot this year in terms of I'm not interested in any more quote unquote career progression right now. I'm really happy. I want to stay at my job. I don't necessarily want to do anything else in terms of that. I just want to feel content and still, because I have had no stillness for like 4 years. I have moved house 5 times with Joe. I have had 3 different jobs, 3 different visas, and I just want to just enjoy my life and just feel grateful for where I am right now and just travel a bit more.
Yeah, I love that message. And sometimes we get sucked into the hustle culture and of like, do. But then
what's next?
Exactly. Yeah. What's next? And what mountain do I have to climb next? And it's like, why don't we take the time to just be present and like enjoy what's happening at the moment? So love that. Anything else you want to end on?
No, just thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it, Jaden. I'm in awe of the setting.
Oh, appreciate it.
Fantastic. And I can't wait to see how you grow this year.
But be sure to follow @Life with Em podcast on Instagram, and we'll catch you in the next episode.